just by the show of hands, do you believe that no one is really disadvantaged? No one is disadvantaged? Some people are disadvantaged? Interesting. But you see, if no one is truly disadvantaged, like the topic says, how do we explain poverty? And what about people that were born with impaired hearing? And this is speaking to those that said that no one is really disadvantaged. People with impaired sight, malformed limbs. How can someone thrive when life actually seems unfair? Is that not a disadvantage? And in some communities, why should I be born a man? If everything I do is to live, toil, get old, be lonely, and die. And it's not just about men. There are some communities where if you're born a woman, you're not even free to imagine. You're not free to aspire. Are these not disadvantages, please? And this is actually to the folks that say no one is disadvantaged. You know, there's something, if you did Christian religious knowledge in school, there's this quote in the Bible that says, "What shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world and suffers the loss of his soul?" But you know, I coined it a little bit more. I said, what shall it profit a man if he's born a Nigerian and suffers the loss of his soul? Don't you think it's not double jeopardy? That you were shouting up NEPA whenever they brought light because there was so much heat, and you now go to hellfire. Come on. Is that not a disadvantage? But you see, I'll anchor my thoughts. When I reflected on that, I'll anchor it on two things. The first is what I call compensatory adaptation. You see, when one sense becomes impaired, others grow sharper to compensate. Of course, a blind person hears more keenly. And those with mobility issues, they probably think or they create more deeply. But it's not just biology. It is human. People that lack privilege in one area, they often develop resilience, strategy, and depth in another area. Think about it. Have you not noticed how Nigerians excel academically when they go abroad, or even in their profession? Yes, we are smart. Don't take that away from us. But there is grit that we've built surviving chaos. I can remember myself studying engineering, one of my GLS courses in year one. We're 500 in the class, and I have my notes in the back of my pocket. How would I even hear and follow when there was no public address system? Then the same me graduated, and you take me to Oxford. Come on. There would be an unfair advantage there against the people that grew up where there was order. So the grit we built in surviving chaos, it becomes an advantage in order. That's what we call compensatory adaptation, turning deficit into an advantage. Now, there's a second principle when I was reflecting on that topic. It's related to the first, and it's just one word, called neuroplasticity. The brain has this ability to reorganize itself and form new connections to compensate for a loss. Yeah. But here's the catch. That ability does not necessarily activate fully until we accept the reality. So I wrote in my note that resistance of reality blocks adaptation. When my dad lost his limb, so my dad was shot many years ago, and complications from that. It was 23rd of December, I think, 2003. We didn't have a Christmas, you can imagine. He was shot and many things, and he lost his limb. You know, normally from biology, his brain will begin to rewire. And the neurons that were serving one limb, they'll start reassigning them to another. But I noticed that in my dad's case, his adaptation was very slow and painful. You know why? Daddy was a force of life. As in, he controlled everything around him. He did his best to determine his outcomes. He worked with his hands. You know, these people that they were larger than life in a way that they didn't believe that there was anything that they put their minds to that they won't achieve. Now, later Daddy would tell us that staying alive, knowing that he would lose his limb, was just because he felt the family wasn't strong enough to survive without him. Because he would have preferred to be a dead man than to walk with one limb. So even with the prosthesis, the best kind of prosthesis we got, Daddy's motion never really became normal. Like you see people with prosthesis, they run and the rest of them. And for decades, he lived with this phantom pain. His brain was still reaching out for what was no longer there. So it was as if the leg was there, but he lived with it. He always felt it. And sometimes I wonder, what if Daddy had sort of leaned into this thing and he said, now I have one leg and I'm going to be using prosthesis and life will be larger than it was before. Is it possible that there were advantages that were embedded in this thing, in this loss? I don't know. You see, when we deny loss, grief, or limitation, we slow down that ability of the brain to reorganize itself. It is like refusing the system to reboot after a crash. Can you imagine a natural athlete refusing to admit that he's not built for swimming? Maybe because his dad was a swimmer and the people around him are swimmers. And he spends his time mastering water when he was supposed to be on the track. That's what many of us do. We fight our wiring. We resist our truth. And in that resistance, we lose the power to become. We lose the power to evolve. That even if we started in a place of disadvantage, we don't embrace it. We don't say, this is who I am. We fight it as if it's a force that came against us. See, I come from Nigeria, and many of us do. A country that prides itself in what? Diversity. We call it strength. But we accept our differences. You know, the differences are actually the things that look like the disadvantages of having a multicultural, multi-tribe society, right? And we just scream, oh, strength in diversity. But do we accept? Have we leaned into our differences? We whisper about the Civil War, but we never confront the issues. You know, any person from the Southeast or probably South-South that's a millennial or a Gen Z, don't even talk about Gen X. You say they were not alive during the war. They can point to how their parents were set back or how their grandparents were set back, and they have their own tales of what it looks like. And guess what? In the country, we hush it. That's part of our differences. Do we lean into it? See, we celebrate our religious imbalance, our religious balance and freedom. But we never ask ourselves, why are Fridays work days, while Sundays our church days. Meanwhile, about half of the people in the country perform their religious rituals on Fridays. Now, I'm not making a case to add Fridays to the holidays, but I'm saying, why do we feel somehow when these kind of things come up and we say we're strong? Diversity? Come on. By not leaning into our differences, we have robbed ourselves the strength that true diversity brings. Now let's talk about men. Men often hide pain, loneliness, and the feeling of inadequacy behind physical strength and logic. But that armor, that mask we wear, it becomes an inhibitor. It dulls our creativity and it blocks the emotional strength that comes with vulnerability. Maybe that's the missing link. That's the bridge between the men we are and the fathers and leaders that we are meant to become. We spend generations proving our strength. When the world really needs from us, what the world needs from us is actually our wholeness. Because true strength is not the absence of disadvantage or pain. It is the presence of meaning despite it. You see, I wrote here that acceptance is that trigger for adaptation. You need to accept who you are first. Embrace it. Or should I say neuroplasticity? It follows surrender. Beyond the brain's natural ability to stretch lies the soul's capacity to first accept and be grateful for who we are so that we can become who we are meant to be. And when we talk about redefining masculinity, let's start here. Neither man nor woman has an advantage. Nobody has an advantage. Each carries a compensatory strength, a unique way to complement the other. Because life is not about advantages or disadvantages. Life is about meaning. See, people, there is a force higher than our definition of success or failure. It's a force that shapes crisis, those things we call disadvantages, into opportunity. It shapes loss into rebirth. Now, if we embrace this truth, we will stop asking, why me? Why this disadvantage? Rather, we'll begin to ask, what for? Because every crisis carries within it a seed of greater becoming. And when we all accept that we are made for meaning, boy, girl, man, woman, we will realize with humility and with hope that no one is truly disadvantaged, but we are all made uniquely for meaning wherever we find ourselves. And that's the message I leave with us. Don't look at the disadvantage. You called it disadvantage. But nature, God, the universe, shaped you that way because of the meaning you have resident inside of you. So go find your meaning. Thank you.